"It should have been you," the man snarled, his voice a venomous whisper against the silken cushions of the royal suite. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of bone. Prince Kalen, his silver eyes wide with a mixture of shock and agony, was pinned to the floor, a ceremonial dagger pressed to his throat. The attacker, a shadow in the moonlight filtering through the grand balcony doors, was one of his own royal guards, his face twisted in a mask of betrayal. I was just Ilara, a maid, invisible in my drab gray uniform, clutching a heavy silver water pitcher until my knuckles turned white. My own scent, rain-washed earth and wildflowers, the mark of a low-born wolf-shifter from the forgotten Sunstone pack, was hopefully masked by the cloying aroma of expensive oils and royal linen. They never saw the maids. We were ghosts who cleaned up messes. Tonight, I was about to make one. Wait, before the next revelation unfolds, if this mystery has already captivated you, let us know where you're following this story from. To ensure you don't miss unexpected claims, broken bonds, or awakenings under the moon, subscribe and stay close. Now, back to the scene. The guard's attention was solely on the prince, the alpha heir to the formidable Onyx blood pack. "Your brother sends his regards," the traitor spat, applying more pressure. A thin line of crimson bloomed on Kalen's pale throat. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through my terror. I wasn't a warrior. I was a nobody, a refugee whose pack had been decimated, forced to serve in the palace of our conquerors to survive. But something primal, something deeper than fear, coiled in my gut. It was the instinct of a wolf to protect, an instinct I thought had died with my family. Kalen's scent, a powerful blend of winter pine and crackling ozone, filled my senses, and it didn't smell like an oppressor. It smelled like something else, something I couldn't name but felt in the marrow of my bones. Without another thought, I lunged. The silver pitcher, heavy and ornate, became an extension of my arm. I swung with all the force of my desperation. A silent scream locked in my throat. The sound of metal connecting with the guard's skull was a sickening crack that echoed in the opulent silence. He crumpled without a sound, a puppet with its strings cut, collapsing beside the prince he'd intended to murder. For a moment, there was only the sound of our ragged breaths. Kalen pushed the guard's limp body off him and scrambled to his feet, his hand immediately going to the cut on his throat. His silver eyes, the color of a storm-tossed sea, locked onto mine. The shock in them was quickly replaced by a dawning, predatory intensity that made the hair on my arms stand on end. He stared at me, truly saw me, for the first time since I'd begun working in the palace a year ago. His gaze wasn't one of gratitude. It was assessing, possessive, and utterly terrifying. He took a step closer, his powerful frame eclipsing the moonlight. I instinctively took a step back, my heart pounding a rhythm of pure fear. The empty pitcher slipped from my nerveless fingers and clattered onto the marble floor. "You," he breathed, his voice a low growl that vibrated through the floorboards and up my spine. He stalked toward me, his movements fluid and dangerous, the grace of a predator. I was cornered, trapped between the wall and the most powerful alpha in the kingdom. "What is your name?" "Ilara," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. I kept my eyes downcast, a sign of submission I had perfected. To look a high-born alpha in the eye was to issue a challenge. He reached out and tilted my chin up with one long, calloused finger, forcing me to meet his gaze. His eyes were mesmerizing, drawing me in. I could feel the raw power rolling off him in waves, an intoxicating and suffocating force. He studied my face, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. "Ilara," he repeated, the name a strange caress on his lips. You saved my life. I swallowed hard, unable to speak. Relief was a distant, flickering candle in a hurricane of fear. I had just saved the prince, but I had also revealed myself. I had attacked a royal guard. The punishment for such an act was death, regardless of the circumstances. I had to, I finally managed. A slow, dangerous smile curved his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. You did, he agreed. And now I have a problem. He let go of my chin and began to pace, the very picture of contained violence. An assassination attempt orchestrated by my own brother, no less. And the only witness is a little maid. He stopped and turned to face me again, his expression unreadable. A maid who fights like a cornered wolf. My blood ran cold. He knew. Of course he knew. An alpha of his strength could scent another shifter, even one as weak as me. Do you know what will happen to you if this gets out, Ilara? He asked, his voice deceptively soft. They will question you. They will torture you to find out who you conspired with. They will not believe a servant girl could overpower a trained royal guard. They will assume you were part of a rival plot. Tears welled in my eyes, blurring his formidable shape. I didn't, I swear, Your Highness, I acted alone. I know, he said, and the certainty in his voice surprised me. I can smell the truth on you, and the fear. He stepped closer again, invading my personal space until I could feel the heat radiating from his body. He leaned in, his lips brushing against my ear. But no one else will believe it. Your life is forfeit. Unless... He pulled back, and I held my breath, hanging on that single word. Unless. Unless you are beyond their reach, he finished, his silver eyes boring into mine. Unless you belong to me, utterly and completely. My mind reeled, unable to comprehend his meaning. Belong to him? Was he offering me protection, or a different kind of prison? What? What do you mean? I whispered, my voice trembling. Prince Kyelen's expression was deadly serious. He reached out and tucked a stray strand of my brown hair behind my ear, his touch sending a jolt of electricity through me. You saved the life of a prince. A life debt has been created. There is only one way to repay such a debt, and only one way for me to ensure your silence and your safety. He took my hand, his grip firm and unyielding, and brought it to his lips, pressing a kiss to my trembling knuckles. His eyes never left mine, a silent vow passing between us in the charged air. You will become my wife, he declared, not a proposal, but a command. You will be my princess, my queen. No one will dare to touch you then. The world tilted on its axis. The words were so ludicrous, so impossible, that I almost laughed. A maid, a broken refugee from a dead pack, to marry the alpha prince of the Onyx blood pack? It was a death sentence of a different kind. I would be torn apart by the court, by his family, by the pack, who would never accept a low-born wolf as their Luna. I can't, I gasped, pulling my hand away. They will kill me. Your people will never accept me. They will have no choice, Kyelen stated, his voice ringing with absolute authority. I am their future Alpha King. My word is law, and I have decided. You are mine. He saw the mutiny, the sheer terror in my eyes. His own hardened. This is not a request, Ilara. It is a demand. Your life is in my hands. You can either be my bride or the traitor's accomplice. The choice is yours, but I suggest you choose wisely." He turned and strode towards the door, calling for the guard. The dilemma he presented was no choice at all. It was a gilded cage or a shallow grave. As the doors opened and loyal guards flooded in, their eyes widening at the sight of their fallen comrade and their bleeding prince, Kyelen glanced back at me. His silver eyes were chips of ice, but deep within them, I saw a flicker of something else, a fire, a possession. He had claimed me, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that my life as an invisible maid was over. I was now a pawn in a royal game of power and betrayal, a game I had no idea how to play. My act of courage had not set me free. It had bound me to the most dangerous man in the kingdom. The days that followed were a blur of gilded terror. I was whisked away from the servants' quarters, my simple gray dress replaced by gowns of silk and velvet that felt like costumes on my skin. I was given my own suite of rooms, larger and more opulent than any space I had ever imagined. Yet they felt more like a prison than my cramped cot ever had. Whispers followed me down every corridor, the stares of courtiers and servants alike a physical weight on my shoulders. They called me the gutter wolf, the prince's pet. The story spun for the public was a carefully constructed fantasy. I was the last daughter of a minor, long-lost noble house, and the prince, in his great wisdom, had seen my true worth and chosen me to be his bride. It was a lie so thin it was transparent, and everyone knew it. Kyelen was a constant, intimidating presence. He decreed that I was to dine with him, walk with him in the royal gardens, and sit beside him during tedious court proceedings. He was teaching me, he said, how to be a princess, but it felt more like he was taming a wild animal. He corrected my posture, my speech, the way I held a fork. Every interaction was a lesson, every conversation a test. He was infuriatingly patient, his control absolute. Yet beneath the surface of the cool, commanding alpha, there was a simmering fire I could feel every time he was near. Our proximity was a constant torment. My wolf, a creature I had suppressed for years, was stirring, drawn to his powerful alpha scent. It was a dangerous, unwanted connection. He was my captor, not my mate. The moon goddess would never be so cruel. One evening, he found me in the royal library, a place I had sought out as a refuge. The scent of old paper and leather was a comfort. I was tracing the faded map of the territories on a large globe, my finger lingering over the small, forgotten patch of land that had once been the home of the Sunstone Pack. Homesick? His voice, low and resonant, came from directly behind me. I jumped, startled. I hadn't heard him approach. "Your Highness," I murmured, dipping into a clumsy curtsy, my borrowed silk dress rustling around me. "Kyelen," he corrected, for the 10th time that day. "You will be my wife. You will call me by my name." I couldn't bring myself to do it. The name felt too intimate, a privilege I hadn't earned and didn't want. He stepped around the globe, his silver eyes fixed on my face. "Your pack was the Sunstone Pack, weren't they? Wiped out in the border wars a decade ago." I flinched, the casual mention of my life's greatest tragedy a physical blow. "Yes," I said, my voice tight. "They were known for their healers," he continued, his gaze unwavering, "not for their warriors." He gestured back towards his suite, in the general direction of where I had saved his life. "And yet you fought for me." I don't know why," I lied. The truth was far more complicated, a tangled mess of instinct and a strange, unwilling pull towards him that I refused to acknowledge. "Don't you?" he challenged softly. He closed the distance between us in a single, fluid step. He was so close I could see the flecks of dark gray in his silver eyes. "I think you do. The same way I knew you were not a threat, even as you stood over a dead guard with my blood on your hands." My breath hitched. "What are you talking about?" "There is a connection between us, Ilara," he said, his voice dropping to a husky whisper. "A hum in the blood, a pull of the soul. You feel it too. Don't lie to me." "You're mistaken," I said, forcing the words out past the lump in my throat. My wolf was howling within me, clawing at the walls of my control, screaming a single word. "Mate!" I pushed it down, ruthlessly. He could not be my mate. The prince of the pack that had destroyed mine? A man who had blackmailed me into this sham of an engagement? It was impossible. A cosmic joke. His eyes darkened, a flash of frustration, or perhaps hurt crossing his features. I am never mistaken about such things. He reached out, his hand hovering just inches from my cheek. "Whether you admit it or not, you are mine, and I protect what is mine. My brother, Lyron, will not rest. He tried to kill me once. He will try again. And now you are a target, too. He will see you as my weakness." The reality of his words crashed down on me. I wasn't just a pawn anymore. I was a target. Why? Why is he doing this? Kalen's jaw tightened. The Alpha throne. He has always coveted it. He sees our father's favor towards me as a slight. He believes I am weak, unworthy. He will stop at nothing to take what he believes is his birthright. He finally dropped his hand, which is why you must learn to defend yourself properly. The next day, he took me to the royal training grounds. The clang of steel and the grunts of exertion filled the air. The royal guard, the same men who sneered at me in the corridors, stopped their training to stare as Kalen led me to the center of the yard. He handed me a wooden practice sword. It was heavy and awkward in my hands. "The picture was effective," he said, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips as he picked up his own sword. "But not reliable. You need skill, not just desperation." For weeks he trained me. Every morning, before the sun had fully risen, we were in the yard. He was a relentless teacher, pushing me past my limits, forcing me to learn, to adapt, to fight. He taught me footwork, parries, attacks. He was faster, stronger, more skilled in every way, and he never let me win. He would disarm me, knock me down, and force me to get back up again and again. The gutters watched, their initial mockery slowly turning into a grudging respect. The gutter wolf could fight. During those sessions, the physical barrier between us dissolved. We were no longer prince and maid, but two shifters, two bodies in a dance of combat. His hands would guide my hips to correct my stance. His breath would be warm on my neck as he whispered instructions in my ear. His body would brace mine as he demonstrated a block. And with every touch, the unwanted bond between us strengthened. My wolf thrilled at the contact, at his praise when I finally executed a move correctly. I hated myself for it. I hated the way my body betrayed me, the way my heart would race for reasons that had nothing to do with exertion. One particularly grueling morning, I finally managed to slip past his guard and land the flat of my blade against his ribs. It was a clumsy, lucky shot, but it was a hit. He froze, his silver eyes wide with surprise. I stood, chest heaving, my wooden sword held aloft, a triumphant grin spreading across my face. And then he smiled. A true, genuine smile that transformed his harsh features, making him look younger, almost carefree. "Not bad," he admitted, his voice laced with pride. "Not bad at all, little wolf." In that moment, standing in the dust of the training yard, covered in sweat and bruises, the lines blurred. He wasn't the arrogant prince or my cold-hearted captor. He was just Kalen, and I, for the first time, felt a flicker of something other than fear or resentment. It was a dangerous, treacherous warmth that spread through my chest. The push and pull between us had become a dizzying dance, and I was beginning to lose my footing, unsure of where the performance ended and reality began. I was falling for my captor, and I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that this emotional entanglement was a far greater threat to my survival than any assassin's blade. The engagement was a whirlwind of public appearances and private tensions. Kalen paraded me before the court, a living symbol of his supposed benevolence. I learned to smile, to nod, to wear the opulent gowns and jewels as if they were a second skin. But every night I would return to my silent, lonely suite and strip away the facade, feeling like an imposter in my own life. The only time I felt real was in the pre-dawn hours on the training grounds with Kalen. The bruises were a comfort, a tangible reminder of something solid in a world of lies. One evening, a grand ball was held in our honor. The great hall was a sea of shimmering silks, glittering diamonds, and veiled animosity. I stood by Kalen's side, my hand resting stiffly on his arm, a forced smile plastered on my face. His scent was a fortress around me, warding off the curious and the hostile, but it was also a cage. "You look beautiful," he murmured, his voice a low rumble against my ear, intended only for me. I was wearing a gown of midnight blue silk that shimmered with embroidered silver stars, a nod to the onyx blood pack's celestial sigil. My hair, usually tied in a simple braid, was swept up in an intricate arrangement of curls and jeweled pins. I looked like a princess. I felt like a fraud. "Thank you, Your Highness," I replied, the title a deliberate barrier between us. His fingers tightened on my arm, a silent reprimand. "Kalen," he insisted, his voice hardening slightly. Before he could say more, a figure approached us, gliding through the crowd with an easy, predatory grace. He had the same silver eyes as Kalen, the same aristocratic features, but his smile was all sharp edges. "Brother," the man said, his voice smooth as poisoned honey, "you are looking well. The recent excitement does not seem to have affected you." "Lyran," Kalen greeted, his own voice dropping several degrees. He moved slightly, positioning himself more fully in front of me, a subtle, protective gesture. "I am resilient." Prince Lyran's gaze slid past his brother and landed on me. He raked his eyes over my form, a smirk playing on his lips. "And this must be the little stray you've picked up. The last of the Sunstones, they say. How quaint." He took my hand and bowed over it, his lips brushing my knuckles. His touch was cold, reptilian. "A pleasure, Lady Ilara. I confess I am surprised. I never took my brother for a sentimentalist, rescuing lost puppies." I snatched my hand back as if burned. "I am not a puppy," I said, my voice shaking with a rage that surprised me. Lyran laughed, a sharp, unpleasant sound. "Oh, she has claws. How delightful." His eyes met Kalen's over my head, a silent, venomous challenge passing between them. "Do be careful, brother. Pets have a tendency to run away or get lost." The threat was unmistakable. He was talking about me. Kalen's aura of power flared, a palpable wave of pressure that made the air crackle. "She is not a pet. She is my future queen, and you would do well to remember that." Lyran simply smiled, a chilling, knowing expression, before melting back into the crowd. I was trembling, the encounter leaving me feeling violated and exposed. Kalen led me towards the less crowded colonnade, his grip on my arm still firm. "Are you all right?" he asked, his silver eyes scanning my face, searching for any sign of distress. "He's the one," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "The one who sent the assassin." "I know," Kalen said, his jaw tight. "He's grown bold." He stopped and turned to face me, his hands coming up to cup my face. His touch was surprisingly gentle. "This is why you must not leave my side. This is why you must trust me." "Trust you?" I scoffed, the fear and anger bubbling over. "You've trapped me. You forced me into this lie, put a target on my back, and now you ask for my trust? You use me as a shield, a pawn in your game with your brother." I pushed against his chest, but it was like pushing against a stone wall. "I am not your property." A flicker of raw hurt crossed his face, so potent and real it stole my breath. "Is that what you think this is?" he asked, his voice rough with an emotion I couldn't place. "That I am using you? What else would you call it?" I cried, tears of frustration stinging my eyes. "I would call it saving your life," he thundered, his control finally snapping. The alpha in him surfaced, his voice a commanding roar that made my entire body instinctively want to submit. "I would call it protecting the woman who is my fated mate, even if she is too stubborn and blind to see it." The world stopped. The music, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, it all faded into a dull hum. Mate. He had said it. The word I had been fighting, denying, running from, was now out in the open, hanging in the air between us like a physical thing. "No," I whispered, shaking my head in denial. "It can't be." "It is," he said, his voice softening, but his gaze was still intense, burning into me. "The moment you walked into my rooms that night, I felt it, the pull. When you fought for me, my own wolf recognized yours. It recognized its other half. Why do you think I chose this path? Why do you think I risked my father's wrath and the council's scorn to claim a maid as my bride? I did it for you, Ilara, to protect you." I stared at him, my mind a maelstrom of confusion and disbelief. Could it be true? Was this entire ordeal, this terrifying gilded cage, his twisted way of protecting his mate? The idea was so overwhelming, so contrary to everything I had believed that I couldn't process it. All the moments of tension, the charged touches during training, his possessive stares, they all clicked into place, reframed by this single cataclysmic revelation. I don't know what to say," I stammered. "Say you believe me," he pleaded, his voice laced with a vulnerability I had never heard before. "Say you'll stop fighting me, stop fighting us." But before I could answer, a commotion erupted from the ballroom, shouts of alarm, the crash of breaking glass. Guards rushed past us, their swords drawn. Kalen instantly released me, his body tensing, the protector, the prince, snapping back into place. "Stay here," he commanded, before striding towards the chaos. I watched him go, my heart torn in two. My mind was still reeling from his confession. Mate! He was my mate! The prince who held my life in his hands, the son of the alpha who had destroyed my home, was the other half of my soul. But this revelation was not a comfort. It was a fracture, a deep, seismic crack in the foundations of my world. If he was my mate, then my life was irrevocably tied to his, to this court of vipers, to his deadly family feud. And if Lyran knew, if he suspected the truth of our bond, he would not see me as Kalen's weakness. He would see me as his ultimate weapon. The secret was out. Not to the world, but between us. And it had broken everything. The fragile truce we had built on the training grounds was shattered, replaced by a truth far more dangerous than any lie. The chaos in the ballroom was a targeted diversion. While the guards were occupied with a staged brawl, Lyron made his move. It wasn't a direct attack, but something far more insidious. When Kalen returned to the colonnade, his face grim, I was gone. My abduction was swift and silent. One moment I was watching Kalen disappear into the throng, my mind reeling. The next, a cloth was pressed over my face, the sweet, cloying scent of wolfsbane filling my lungs. My shifter healing and strength were useless against the poison. My world dissolved into blackness. I awoke to the damp chill of a stone cell. A single torch flickered on the wall, casting long, dancing shadows. My head pounded, and a metallic taste filled my mouth. Across the small space, leaning against the bars of the cell door, was Prince Lyron. He was cleaning his nails with the tip of a dagger, a casual, terrifying gesture. "Awake at last," he said, without looking up. "I was beginning to get bored." "Where am I?" I croaked, my throat raw. "The old dungeons," he replied cheerfully. "Beneath the palace. Soundproof. No one will hear you scream." He finally met my gaze, his silver eyes glittering with malevolent glee. "My brother is tearing the palace apart looking for you. It's quite the spectacle. He looks so emotional. It's a new look for him." "Let me go," I demanded, trying to inject a strength I didn't feel into my voice. I pushed myself into a sitting position, my body aching. "Oh, I don't think so," he purred, pushing off the door and sauntering over to me. He crouched down, bringing his face level with mine. "You see, I've been watching you and my dear brother. The way he looks at you, the way his scent clings to you. It's not just the look of a prince and his pet project. It's something more, primal." He sniffed the air around me. "Ah, there it is, the faint scent of a mating bond. Not yet claimed, but undeniable. He found his mate. A broken, worthless nobody from a dead pack. How beautifully tragic. My blood ran cold. He knew. You are his greatest weakness, little wolf," Lyron whispered, his voice a venomous caress. "He thinks by making you his princess, he is protecting you. But all he has done is paint a target on your back. And now I will use you to break him. He will find me," I spat, "and he will kill you." Lyron laughed. "Perhaps, but by then it will be too late." He stood up and walked back to the door. "I'm going to send him a message. A piece of you, a lock of your hair, perhaps, stained with your blood. Just enough to make him desperate, to make him make a mistake. And when he comes for you, he will come alone. And I will be waiting." He left, the heavy door clanging shut, the bolt sliding home with a sound of finality. I was alone in the dark, with nothing but his poisonous words and my own terror. Kalen's confession replayed in my mind. "I did it for you, Ilara, to protect you." His attempts to keep me safe had led me directly into his brother's trap. Our bond, the thing that should have been a source of strength, was being twisted into a weapon against us. For 2 days I was left in the darkness. They gave me water and stale bread, just enough to keep me alive. The wolfsbane lingered in my system, leaving me weak and disoriented. My wolf whimpered within me, a constant, low thrum of distress, sensing its mate's anguish but unable to reach him. On the third day, Lyran returned. He didn't come alone. He dragged a man into my cell, a man in the livery of the Royal Guard. It was one of the guards who had often watched me train, a young man who had once offered me a canteen of water with a shy smile. His face was now a mask of terror. "My brother is not taking the bait," Lyran said, his voice tight with annoyance. "He's being cautious, methodical. He has the palace on lockdown, searching every room. So, we must accelerate the timeline." He pressed the dagger to the young guard's throat. "I'm going to make you watch, Lady Alara, and your screams will be my next message to Kaelin." "No!" I screamed, scrambling backward. "Don't! Please!" "He's loyal to my brother," Lyran sneered, "a misplaced loyalty. It's time for a lesson." But as Lyran raised his dagger, a desperate, wild plan formed in my mind. It was insane, a long shot, but it was all I had. I had to create a distraction. I had to appeal to the one thing that might matter more to Lyran than his hatred for his brother, his own ambition. "Wait!" I yelled, my voice ringing with a false confidence. "If you kill him, Kaelin will know it was you. You'll lose your element of surprise. But there's another way, a better way." Lyran paused, the dagger hovering. He looked at me, intrigued. "Go on." "You want the throne," I said, my words tumbling out in a rush. "Killing Kaelin is messy. It could lead to a civil war. The pack will not easily accept an alpha who murders his own brother. But what if he stepped aside?" "He would never," Lyran scoffed. "He would for me," I said, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. "Our bond." "It's strong, stronger than you think. He loves me. He would renounce the throne to save my life. Let me speak to him. Let me convince him." Lyran stared at me, his sharp mind clearly weighing the possibilities. A bloodless coup was far more appealing than a bloody one. "You would do that? Convince your mate to give up his birthright for you?" "I would do anything to live," I said, lowering my eyes, playing the part of the terrified, selfish woman. It was a gamble. I was betting that his arrogance, his belief that everyone was as power-hungry as he was, would make him believe me. For a long moment, he was silent. Then, a slow, cruel smile spread across his face. "This is so much better," he whispered, a thrilled, ecstatic light in his eyes. He lowered the dagger and shoved the young guard out of the cell. "Get him out of my sight." He turned back to me. "Very well, Lady Alara. You will have your audience. We will arrange a meeting. But know this, if you try to trick me, I will kill you both, slowly." He believed me. The first part of my desperate plan had worked. But as he left me once again in the suffocating darkness, a wave of despair washed over me. I had bought us time, but I had also just promised to break the heart of the man I was beginning to realize I loved. I had to convince Kaelin to give up everything he was, all for a lie. And I had no idea if either of us would survive the fallout. The fractures between us had become a gaping chasm, and I had just agreed to push him in. The meeting was set for the following night at the abandoned moon temple on the cliffs overlooking the sea. It was neutral ground, a sacred place no one had used for generations. Lyran brought me, a hood over my head, my hands bound in front of me. I could feel his anticipation, a smug, triumphant energy rolling off him. He believed he had already won. When the hood was pulled from my head, I saw him. Kaelin stood alone at the center of the crumbling temple ruins, the moonlight silvering his hair. He looked tired, haggard, but his eyes, when they met mine, were blazing with a furious, protective fire. My heart ached up a sight of him. My wolf howled, a desperate, joyous cry that only I could hear. "Maid, Ilara," he breathed, his voice raw. He took a step forward, but Lyron's men, shadows detaching themselves from the broken pillars, raised their crossbows. Kalen froze. Brother," Lyron said, placing a cold hand on my shoulder, his dagger pressing against my side. "Patience. We have a business transaction to discuss." Kalen's gaze shifted to his brother, his expression turning to one of pure loathing. "Let her go, Lyron." "In a moment," Lyron said smoothly. "First, your lovely mate has a proposal for you. It seems her own survival is more important to her than your crown. Tell him, my dear." I met Kalen's eyes, my own pleading with him to understand, to see the lie for what it was. "Kalen," I began, my voice trembling. He will kill me if you don't." I took a deep breath, forcing the poisonous words out. "I want you to abdicate, renounce your claim to the Alpha throne, in exchange for my life." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the sound of the waves crashing against the cliffs below. The hurt that flashed in Kalen's eyes was a physical blow, a blade twisting in my own gut. It was more painful than any torture Lyron could have devised. He had believed, for a moment, that I would betray him. I saw his shoulder slump, the light in his eyes dimming. "You would ask this of me?" he asked, his voice hollow, filled with a pain that echoed in the empty space of my soul. "A wise choice, isn't she?" Lyron gloated, squeezing my shoulder. "Pragmatic." But then something shifted. Kalen straightened up, his eyes narrowing. He looked past my face, past the lie, and into my soul. He saw the truth there. He saw my desperate, frantic plan. His expression changed from one of heartbreak to a slow, burning fury. He understood, and he was not angry at me. He was angry at his brother for daring to use me, for daring to make me utter those words. "No," Kalen said, his voice ringing with a power that made the very stones seem to vibrate. "She would not ask this of me." His eyes locked with mine, a silent message passing between us. "I trust you." He then did something completely unexpected. He looked at Lyron and smiled, a cold, predatory smile. "But I will accept your terms." Lyron's eyes widened in shock. Even I was stunned into silence. "I will renounce my claim," Kalen announced, his voice carrying on the wind. "I will sign any document you wish. I will leave this territory and never return. On one condition." "Name it," Lyron said, his voice laced with suspicion, but the thrill of victory was already dawning on his face. "You let her go. Now," Kalen commanded. "She walks to me, unharmed. Only then will we discuss the details of my surrender." Lyron hesitated, his mind racing. It was too easy, but the prize was too great to ignore. The throne, handed to him without a single drop of bloodshed. He looked at me, then back at Kalen. His greed won out over his caution. "Fine," he snarled. He shoved me forward. "Go. But remember, my men have their bows trained on your heart. One wrong move, and your precious mate gets a new title, the Morning King." My hands were still bound, but I walked. Each step was an agony of suspense. I kept my eyes fixed on Kalen, drawing strength from the fierce conviction in his gaze. He believed in me. He was risking everything on a plan I hadn't even had time to fully form. As I reached the halfway point between them, I knew it was time. "Kalen," I called out, my voice clear and steady. "Do you remember the first lesson you taught me? In the training yard?" He nodded slightly, his eyes never leaving mine. "You said desperation is not a reliable weapon," I continued, my voice rising. "But you were wrong. Sometimes it's the only one you have." And with that, I dropped to the ground, rolling behind a fallen stone altar. "It was the signal! Now!" Kalen roared. The world exploded into motion. It wasn't Kalen's men who appeared. It was the young guard from the dungeon, the one whose life I had saved. He and a dozen other guards, the ones who had watched me train, the ones who had seen Kalen's devotion and Lyran's cruelty, burst from the shadows. They were not fighting for a prince. They were fighting for their alpha. Arrows flew, but not at Kalen. Lyran's men, caught completely by surprise, cried out as they were struck down. Lyran stared, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. He had been so focused on Kalen, he had never considered that I might have a plan, that the gutter wolf might have earned the loyalty of his own men. Kalen was already moving, a silver-eyed blur of motion. He dispatched 2 of Lyran's remaining guards with brutal efficiency before launching himself at his brother. The 2 alphas crashed together, a whirlwind of snarls and fury. It was a true wolf fight, raw and unrestrained. While they fought, the young guard, whose name I now knew was Tomas, was at my side, cutting the ropes from my wrists. "Lady Ilara," he said, his face grim but determined. "The prince, he trusted you would find a way. He told us to follow your lead." I looked at the brutal fight between the brothers. Kalen was stronger, but Lyran was treacherous, fighting dirty. He had a hidden blade, and he managed to slash Kalen across the arm. Kalen roared in pain, but didn't falter. I knew I had to end this. I saw it then. A heavy iron brazier lying on its side near the edge of the cliff. Adrenaline surged through me. I grabbed a fallen piece of rubble, a hefty, jagged rock. While Lyran was distracted, trying to drive his blade into Kalen's side, I ran at him. I slammed the rock into the back of his knee. His leg buckled with a sickening crunch, and he screamed, a sound of pure agony and rage. He stumbled, his balance gone, right into Kalen's path. Kalen didn't hesitate. He slammed his fist into Lyran's face, a blow that sent my captor staggering backward toward the cliff's edge. Lyran teetered there for a moment, his silver eyes wide with shock and fear, before he tumbled over the edge, his scream swallowed by the roar of the sea below. Silence descended upon the Moon Temple once more. The loyal guards were securing the few remaining traitors. Kalen stood, chest heaving, his arm bleeding freely, staring at the spot where his brother had vanished. Then he turned and looked at me. I ran to him. I didn't curtsy, I didn't hesitate. I threw my arms around his neck, burying my face in his chest, inhaling his scent of pine and ozone. He was real. He was safe. He was mine. He wrapped his arms around me, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. He buried his face in my hair, his whole body trembling with the aftermath of the fight. "Ilara," he choked out, his voice thick with emotion. "I knew you wouldn't betray me. I knew it." "I love you," I whispered into his tunic, the words I had been so afraid of finally breaking free. "I love you, Kalen." He pulled back just enough to look at me, his storm-tossed silver eyes filled with an emotion so powerful it made my knees weak. He searched my face, seeing the truth, the love, the absolute certainty there. He lowered his head and kissed me. It wasn't a prince's kiss or a captor's kiss. It was the kiss of a mate who had found his other half, a kiss of desperation and relief, of promises made and futures claimed. In that moment, surrounded by the ruins of the past, we were not a prince and a maid. We were just two wolves who had found their way home. The redemption was not his or mine alone. It was ours. We had renewed our bond, not with a lie, but with a shared risk, a final, desperate claim made against the world. And as the moon shone down upon us, I knew that our new life was just beginning. With Lyran gone, the threat of civil war vanished. The story we told the court was simple, and, for the most part, true. Lyran had abducted me in an attempt to usurp the throne, and in the ensuing conflict, he had tragically fallen to his death. The guards loyal to Kaelin backed the story, their respect for me now cemented in fact, not rumor. I was no longer the gutter wolf. I was the woman who had helped save the Onyx blood pack from a traitor. The king, Kaelin's father, was a stern, imposing man who had watched the entire affair with a cold, calculating eye. He summoned us to the throne room a week after Lyran's death. The great hall was empty save for the three of us. "You have proven yourself," the old alpha said, his gaze fixed on me. It was not a warm gaze, but it held a new understanding. You have the spirit of a Luna, not through birth, but through action. My son chose well. It was the closest I would ever get to an apology for the destruction of my pack, a silent acknowledgement that strength came in many forms. Our wedding was not the rushed political affair it was once meant to be. It was a true celebration. We were married under the open sky, at the Moon Temple, the place where we had almost lost everything. It was no longer a ruin to me, but a symbol of our trust and resilience. I did not wear the jewels of the Onyx blood pack. Instead, I wore a simple white dress and a crown of the wildflowers that grew only in the Sunstone Valley, a tribute to the past I would never forget, but which no longer defined me. Kaelin and I built a new court, one founded on loyalty and merit, not just bloodlines. Thomas, the young guard, became the captain of our royal guard. We ruled together, my quiet, observant nature a perfect balance to Kaelin's decisive alpha strength. The whispers and stares that had once followed me down the corridors were replaced with nods of genuine respect. Our love, born in violence and forged in betrayal, became the bedrock of our lives. Kaelin was not just my prince, my alpha, my king. He was my partner. He still trained with me in the early mornings, though our sparring sessions now often ended in laughter and kisses rather than bruises. He would listen to my counsel, value my insights, and look at me with a love so profound it still sometimes stole my breath away. One evening, months into our marriage, we stood on the balcony of our suite, the same balcony where I had first seen him, a prince at the mercy of a traitor. The moon was full, casting a luminous glow over the sleeping kingdom. I leaned my head against his chest, his arms wrapped securely around me from behind. The world was quiet, peaceful. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked softly. "That night. If I had just stayed hidden, your life would have been so much simpler." He turned me in his arms, his silver eyes soft in the moonlight. He traced the line of my jaw, the same gesture he had made that first night, but now it was filled with tenderness, not possession. "My life would have been empty," he corrected, his voice a low, sincere rumble. "I was a prince, but I was not whole. You saved me in more ways than one, Ilara. You saved me from my brother, but you also saved me from a life without a soul." He leaned in and kissed me gently. "You are my queen, my mate, my heart. And I would face 1,000 assassins for the chance to find you again." I looked out at the moonlit landscape, at the kingdom that was now my home, held in the arms of the man who was my destiny. The invisible maid was gone, and in her place was a Luna, a queen. Not because of a title or a crown, but because I had chosen to fight. And in doing so, I had found not a gilded cage, but a love more freeing than I had ever imagined. The past was a part of our story, a tapestry of scars and survival. But the future, our future, was a clean, unwritten page waiting for us to fill it together.